Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer Hancock and this is Ask a Humanist for September 2012. Yay, school year started. This show I've got several questions. For those of you who are joining in the chat room, feel free to ask a question. I may not get to it today, but I'll mark it down and address it in a future episode. But today I wanted to talk about a question I had a couple of months ago that I hadn't gotten to yet, which is humanism a cult? And that's a really good question. The answer is no, it's not a cult, it's a philosophy. And there's several things about cults that humanism is not, so let's kind of address these each in turn. Humanism is a philosophy. It's not a religious system. Now, you can have cults based on, not on religion, but this is actually just a philosophy. There is no dogma. There is no rabid devotion to the philosophy. You are free to take from the philosophy what you like and ignore the things that you don't like. No one's going to tell you you're doing it wrong. We just don't roll that way. Humanism is a philosophy. And the people who call themselves humanists, generally speaking, are not devoted followers of anything. That's one of the reasons why we're humanists. So humanism lacks the devotion factor that is evident in a lot of cults. That's, the first thing. The second thing is we don't even have a leader. We have people who are better teachers of humanism. Corliss Lamont, Paul Kurtz, we can go back and research them, but no one treats these people, for the most part, as leaders. And for the most part, we're not devoted to these individuals. We think they're good teachers, but that's about as far as it goes. You don't need to follow one of these teachers to be a humanist. Most people come to humanism on their own. They think it up for themselves and then are surprised to find there's a community for it. There's really no, humanism is such an organic philosophy that people come to just by spending time thinking about what sort of person they want to be, that you really don't even need a leader to be a humanist. There's, you don't even have to have anybody teach this to you explicitly, because you can come up with a humanist philosophy for yourself, and people do it all the time. I get emails from people from all over the world saying, I came up with this philosophy for myself, and I'm so thrilled that I'm not the only one. That's a very different experience of coming into the philosophy than, say, being taught it in a cult, in an educational setting where you're going to, be told this is the way to do it, all other ways are wrong. So, and one of the reasons people come to humanism and figure humanism out for themselves is because they don't follow the flock. They march to a beat of their own drummer, so they're not likely to begin with to be people that would join a cult, because they're just not followers. They're individuals. They embrace their individuality, and that's another reason why it'd be really inappropriate to describe humanism as a cult, because the people who are humanists shy away from things that are even remotely cult-like just because they are firm individualists. So we don't have a leader. It's a philosophy. We don't have a dogma. And there's no one who's going to tell you you're doing it right or doing it wrong. So it's not a cult in that sense. I think another thing that is really, really important to the discussion of is humanism a cult is where do we come up with our moral authority? Humanism is a philosophy about how to be a moral human being. What is ethical and what is not ethical. That's the main thing that we're talking about when we're discussing humanism. It's a moral philosophy. It's a moral discussion about what it means to be good in any given situation. And again, a humanist defines what is good and what is bad based on the consequences of the action we're discussing or contemplating. You will never hear a humanist say, this is good because Corliss Lamont said it was good. And this is the way we should do it because Corliss Lamont said we should do it this way. Or Paul Kurtz said this, so that's the way we're going to do it. No humanist, as much as we might admire those individuals, would ever appeal to them for moral authority. because that's not where a humanist places moral authority. We place moral authority on the consequences of our actions. So an entire discussion about morality is a very pragmatic conversation about consequences and outcomes and what do we know to be true. What does science tell us is the likely outcome from a set of actions? That's what a humanist is going to discuss and consider as authority for a moral discussion. So again, there's really nothing, there's no object or person or principle that would cause the sort of devotion that you would see in a cult for a humanist. There just isn't. Our moral authority is an appeal to the consequences of our action and our own personal sense of compassion. That's it. So again, there's no object or person we could be cultily devoted to. And again, it's a philosophy. At the end of the day, humanism is a philosophy. You can take from it what you like, ignore the bits that you don't like. I think, too, coming back to this idea of authority and devotion, even the principles that humanists feel very, very, very strongly about, compassion for other human beings, the use of reason and science to help us determine what is true so that we can better make decisions. These things are all knowledge to a humanist is considered partial knowledge. We're intellectually humble. We value the idea that we might be wrong. This is really central to how a humanist approaches the acquisition of knowledge. If you're doing something that I think is personally stupid and harmful, I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I'm going to say, I don't think that's a good idea, but if you want to do it, you go right ahead. And the reason I'd say that is because for all I know, I'm wrong and you're right. So again, when you have this level of built-in humility of really believing that as right as I think I am, I might be wrong, it's really hard to develop the devotion to even a set of principles that would be required for something to be considered a cult. So we don't have any authority. We don't appeal to authority. We have leaders who are teachers that help us tweak our understanding of our philosophy, but they don't tell us what the philosophy is. They help us live our existing philosophy better. We're very, very humble when it comes to the knowledge that we do have. We're aware that we could be wrong. We don't care if you agree with us or not. We're open to ourselves being wrong. These are not the hallmarks of a cult. Cult requires kind of a devotion to principles or a devotion to an individual that borders on kind of extreme and weird in the face of evidence to the contrary. You don't see any of that within humanism. It's just not there. So no, humanism, not a cult, just a philosophy. It's an individual philosophy. We do have leaders who are really good educators, but we don't venerate them and we don't appeal to their authority when we're having a conversation about what is moral. That's done in practical terms on the here and now basis and the situation that we find ourselves in. And we're just too aware that we could be wrong to really work up the devotion required to be a cult. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen. It doesn't mean it couldn't happen. There are individuals within the movement, leaders within the movement, who have kind of cultish following. I think of Silo, his group in the South America, kind of culty, kind of not, hard to tell. Same thing can kind of be said for the people who really, really enjoy Paul Kurtz's work. But again, I know a lot of these people, and yeah, they like him, but they never say things like, well, Paul said this, that, therefore. They never say things like that. They just think he's a really, really good teacher. So humanism, not a cult, just a really cool philosophy. Take what you like, ignore the rest. We don't really care. Okay, so the next question we have has to do with spirituality for humanists. I am on the board for a group called the Spiritual Naturalist Society. And they just debuted, the website debuted yesterday. Woo. And I'm not a spiritual person. I'm a humanist. I'm a materialist. I don't believe there's a spirit world. There is just the material world. That's all that there is. I'm a naturalist. There is only the natural. There is no supernatural. But the word spiritual can have a lot of different meanings. It can refer to spiritualism, and it might not. It all depends. Now, the way Spiritual Naturalist Society views the word spiritual is that it is a natural instinct. It's not just our logic and our reason. It's our motivation to live and to be a good person. That's what they're talking about. How do we live a good and fulfilling, emotionally satisfying life, given that the natural world is all that there is? And I think that's a really, that question really excites me. The idea that we could have a conversation about, well, what are the best practices from Buddhism and Christianity and, you know, humanism and all the Caravaca, what are the Socrates, what can we learn from all these different traditions about how to live a better life in the here and now when you strip away all the supernaturalism and just make it natural, and a natural approach to living life as opposed to a supernatural approach to living life. That is what excites me about humanism, is that it is about morality. It is about being a better person. It is about applying principles to your life to help you live life better. And that's why I agreed to become a board member for the Spiritual Naturalist Society, is because I like learning from other traditions. I like learning what it is to be a better person from the various educators that are participating in the site on the board with me. I think it's very, very exciting. Do I like the word spiritual? Yeah. But he's talking, the site is strictly natural. It rejects supernaturalism and spiritualism. Spirit refers to the motivation, the emotional life that we have. So that's pretty exciting to me. Now, if you want to learn more about secular spirituality, there's a really great essay. If you go to the Congregation for Humanistic Judaism website, there's a really great essay from Rabbi Sherman Wine about what secular spirituality means to him and his practice. And I think John Dewey also wrote an essay on secular spirituality. So this is not a foreign concept within the greater free thought, non-religious humanist community. Some people use the word spiritual to describe that part of themselves that's not just logical. And for me, one of the reasons I like the term humanism is because for me, humanism is not just about the skepticism and the logic and the reason and the science. It's also about the compassion and the morality and the motivation to try and make the world a better place. So one of the reasons I self-define as a humanist is because for me, it's a kind of, it encompasses both the skeptic and the natural and the here and now materialistic viewpoint that I have, and incorporates that into a very, very satisfying, emotionally satisfying way to approach life in general. So if this has any interest for you at all, you want to learn from different educators that come from a variety of traditions, Taoism, Buddhism, secular Judaism, things like that, and humanists, go to the Spiritual Naturalist Society and check them out. They've got great resources, great conversation occurring, and again, it's a natural approach as opposed to a supernatural approach, and for me that's very, very important. So I highly recommend that. But spirituality for a humanist is a very difficult term, getting back to the original question, because it can connote supernaturalism. So a lot of humanists don't use the word spiritual when they're referring to their practice. They just call what they do humanism for that reason. Now, I was on a show called Vortex Sarasota a few months ago, and it's from the Spiritual Broadcasting Network, and they're again a great group of people. One of the most funnest interviews I've ever done. It was really a joy. And George Lewis, who hosts the show, asked me about spiritual things like intuition, things that he considers to be outside of himself in some way, shape, or form. And it was really, and the reason I say some way, shape, or form is because I didn't understand what he was asking me. He was asking me a spiritualist question, and because I'm a materialist, there is only the natural world, everything that exists is matter/energy. I really didn't even understand the question he was asking me. And I felt really bad because I was trying to, but this is the disconnect between people who have supernaturalism in their life and for whom that is a real experience, and for people who don't have that and for whom it's not a real experience. I have to translate the words to try and make sense to something that makes sense to me, and I failed. I failed completely, and we had to change the subject because I really could not understand what he was asking me, and the question itself just didn't make any sense. So for humanists, for most humanists, I would say, who are natural humanists, i.e. materialists, the natural world is all that there is. Everything is made up of matter. There is no spirit matter that exists outside of matter. There's just matter. Issues of spirituality in the supernatural sense are really, really, really difficult for us. We just don't even understand it. I think this is why when Rabbi Sherman Wein coined the term agnostic, meaning he doesn't even know what the term God means unless you describe a specific God. That's me. I have no conception of anything spiritual, and it doesn't mean that my life is lacking or shallow or that I don't have a rich, fulfilling life. I do. I just don't ascribe my intuition to anything outside of myself. It's a biochemical process in my brain. I'm pulling up memories and I'm making connections somehow, and it's coming out as intuition. But it's not a supernatural experience. It's a natural experience. I get that awe when I go to nature, and I go and I see a beautiful sunset over the water. I'm moved by that in a very, very tangible way. And I think religious people would say that that's a spiritual or religious experience. For me, it's a natural experience. That awe is a natural experience. And for me, it's made all the more amazing in that it is natural. And this is why I have a problem understanding why people need the supernatural to feel that, because I feel it all the time. It's a natural experience. It's made all the more amazing because it's natural. I exist. Matter combined to create me against all odds and against its tendency towards entropy. If that doesn't make you feel special, like literally nothing will. Because you are special. Yes, you're a random accident of fate, but you also exist, and that's pretty amazing. So for me, the natural viewpoint heightens the experience of feeling connected to the universe, because I'm made literally of the same thing that stars are made of. I exist because a star exploded at some point. All of this is just, it's mind-blowing. And it's natural. It doesn't require anything supernatural or spiritual to achieve that effect. And because it's tangible, I can get my head around it. It's that much more powerful for me as an experience to contemplate. So I think a lot of people would consider me spiritual, but to me, this is just natural. It's natural. I think the final question I want to discuss was a question that Randy asked from Kissimmee, Florida. Shouldn't science and reason replace religion? Maybe not shouldn't, but couldn't or even won't it replace religion? And I think the answer to that question is it's not going to happen. Scientists have been doing, brain scientists and psychologists and stuff have been doing a lot of research recently into the human propensity towards faith. And it's pretty clear that about 75% of the population hold supernatural beliefs of some sort, and that maybe 10 to 20% don't, and then there's a portion that kind of do and kind of don't. And one of the things that they're finding, and I'm gonna, you know what, I'm not even completely sure, so take this with a grain of salt and do the research, but they think there might be a God gene, that there's a difference in the brain between believers and non-believers that causes believers to ascribe intention to things that a non-believer would not ascribe intention to. And if you believe that there's an intelligence that's intelligently intending to do things, yeah, you're going to be more religious than someone who doesn't have that experience, that doesn't experience the world in that way. And this could just very well be a thing about brain chemistry and population distribution of certain genes. Because there's people who just simply don't, and there's people who simply do. And I don't think that's going to change. I think that's a function of our biology more than it is anything else. I don't think it's something you can logic away. That being said, I think we can increase the levels that people use logic and science and reason to improve their thinking skills as a workaround to the religious impulse. And that's a lot of what I do. I teach skepticism and science and logic to people of faith, not to teach them not to be people of faith, because I really don't care what they believe. I really, really don't. What I care is how well do they solve their problems. And if they solve their problems well, bonus. We all benefit. The more people improve their problem solving, the more everyone benefits from that. And so that's what I'm concerned about in what I do and what I try to do, is to help people make better decisions for themselves. And that is, I think, something we can do regardless, because most people have that ability. And when you talk about problem solving, practical, pragmatic, here and now problem solving, eliminating the supernatural from your problem solving approach, people get that, regardless of their starting point in the faith, non-faith debate. People understand that. Yesterday, I was doing some research, and there's a news article in Arab News that was a report. And the report was that genies don't cause epilepsy. And in the West, we can kind of look at that and go, oh, it's pretty funny that they would think genies cause epilepsy. But it wasn't more than 100 years ago where Americans thought pretty much the same thing. Because if we don't know what's causing something, then we have to guess. And often, if we guess we guess within the framework of our religious beliefs or our worldview, something that would make sense to us in the context of what it is we believe. The great thing that humanism has done for society is introduced humanist methods of problem solving to things like psychology and to medicine. We're looking for natural causes of these problems so that we can have a natural solution to that problem. As soon as you take the supernatural out of that equation, that I don't think it's a genie or an evil spirit or a devil possessing someone, maybe there's another reason why people are having seizures, we suddenly can start asking some really, really cool questions and getting answers to that. And of course, we find out it's brain chemistry. My son has epilepsy. It's a salt imbalance in the brain. There's a couple of different ways that they can either, control the seizures, either by rectifying the salt imbalance or by short-circuiting the mechanism that causes the seizure in the first place. The second one seems to be working for him. But these are natural causes that have natural solutions. And when people are explained to them in this way, that the reliance on supernaturalism for problem solving is actually making problem solving harder to do, and it's not yielding very good results, people let go of that and embrace the more practical approach to problem solving, which is to look for natural problems so that we can solve the natural solution. No, it turns out genies don't cause epilepsy, and that's the result of that approach. So it's incredibly powerful. And again, I think there's always going to be religious people. I think this is a biological thing. Some people's brains are wired to be people of faith, and some people like me, who appear to have the abnormal brain, considering how few of us there are, don't. And there you have it. So no, I don't think science and reason should replace religion at all. I think that we do need to, as the Dalai Lama is talking about, we do need to create a rational basis for morality, though. Something that can transcend the religious beliefs, that people of faith and non-faith and different faiths can agree on as a rational approach to morality and a rational approach to dealing with people who are different from them. And I think within the different faiths and the different philosophic traditions, we have that. And the humanists have been all abuzz about the Dalai Lama's comments, because what he's talking about is humanism. When you talk about humanist, pragmatic, practical morality, people agree with that. They agree wholeheartedly with that, regardless of faith or not faith. So I think that's what we should be focusing on, is not the belief itself or the non-belief, but rather how do we work together, regardless of our differences of beliefs and regardless of the differences in our brains and whether we're neurotypical or neuroatypical. How do we work together to make the world a better place, to improve the ethical nature of our interactions with each other across the board and across the country and across the world? How do we do that? And that requires a rational conversation where the morality is not based in the religious beliefs, but based on something much more practical, much more tangible. In the same way that humanistic medicine and humanistic psychology is based on pragmatic, natural problems and natural solutions, we can apply the same principle to morality, and we are, and it's going to improve everything. And it doesn't require a rejection of religion to do that. It just requires a commitment to coming up with the best ethics that we can, given what we have to work with. So should science and reason replace all that? No, because it's missing the ethical component. And the ethical component has to be integrated in. And to me, that's what humanism is. It's the reason and the rationality combined with the ethics to create a way of approaching life that actually works, that solves problems more effectively, that improves interpersonal relations, improves your life as well as you implement this. So to me, that's what that is. And I hope that helps. So that was, oh my goodness, time goes by so fast, a half hour. That was Humanist, Ask a Humanist for September 2012. If you have any questions for a humanist you would like to ask, feel free to email me. My website is jen-hancock.com. You can post a note for me on the Blog TV site. You can email me directly, jen-hancock.com. I have a comment section there. Feel free to ask me any questions you have about the philosophy of humanism or how a humanist might approach any given topic. And I'll be back again in October. Thanks so much. Bye-bye.